I graduated from the University of Southern California in Los Angeles, and I came back to Dubai with a U.S. degree. I thought to myself, here I am. I've come back with a U.S. degree. Dad, where's my office? Where's my car? Where's my secretary? So my dad took me to see our chief accountant, and he sat me down in front of him. And chief accountant's name was Henry Pinto, and he said, Henry, what's the entry level position that we have currently in the organization? So Henry said, well, it's salesman, outdoor salesman. So my father goes, right, well, my son's going to be assistant outdoor salesman.
Our guest today is the proud inheritor of a name that's been renowned across the Gulf for over 100 years. Rao Sahib Jashanmal first set up a bookshop and general store in Basra in Iraq in 1919, catering to British Armed Forces and expatriate residents. Jashanmal then expanded across the GCC, moving into Kuwait in 1934, Bahrain in 1935, and landing here in Dubai in 1956, with another iconic store opening in Abu Dhabi in 1964. Shuja Jashanmal, Rao's grandson, first joined the company in 1987 after graduating from USC in California, initially starting as a salesman before becoming the cosmetics brand manager. He is now the group CEO and has overseen the expansion of Jashanmal to cover more than 150 stores in the UAE, Kuwait, Bahrain, Oman, and India. Assalamu alaikum and welcome to Homegrown DXB, the show taking you inside the lives of the people changing yours right here in Dubai. I'm your host, Omar Butti. And I'm delighted to have with me on the show today Shuja Jashanmal, the Group CEO of the Jashanmal Group. Shuja, thank you so much for being on the show with us.
Thank you for inviting me. Pleasure being here.
Absolute pleasure having you, especially with someone from the Jashanmal company, the Jashanmal name, a name that's been certainly well known across the Gulf for now over 100 years, which is pretty incredible to think about, especially when you consider that the UAE is half that age, right?
Right.
So I wanted to go all the way back, and I know that you weren't there personally, but your grandfather was, and I imagine in the family there's a lot of discussion, a lot of stories that were shared over the years about those early years. 1919, the first Jashanmal Brothers opens in Basra in Iraq. Tell us what you've heard of that time, sort of some of the memories, recollections of that, and maybe some of the things that you think maybe informed how the company's developed to today.
It's interesting. It's very interesting that you called it Jashanmal Brothers because very few people actually know that. I mean, today we're known as Jashanmal Group. Most of the people in the Gulf know us as Jashanmal and Sons. That name was around for 70, 80 years. But yes, we started out as Jashanmal Brothers. It was my grandfather and his brother who migrated. They left India and they went to Iraq. They were traders in Karachi when it was part of the British Empire. And they used to supply books and magazines to the British Army that was based there, and they were asked to move to Basra.
Who asked them to move?
The British Army. So they had a small trading business in Karachi, supplying books and magazines to the British Navy and the British Army that was based there, and predominantly importing and supplying them with English books and magazines. They had discovered oil in the Middle East, and the British knew that they had to move a lot of people to the region. They had to move families. They had to set up oil companies. They were making deals across the Middle East. And they wanted to encourage some of the traders from within their, what was then their empire, to relocate to Basra to be able to serve the community of British families and European families that were going to move to the region to set up and work in the oil industry. So he was given £50 and passage to sail from Karachi to Basra. And apparently,
I imagine £50 was a lot.
I was going to say,
right?
apparently in those days, £50 was a lot. It was more than enough to set up a business. So he moved to Basra, and they showed him where he was going to set up a store, and he didn't like it. So he said, "Well, it's not what I had in mind. I want to open an English bookshop right in front of the British Navy base." because back then entertainment, there was no cinemas. There was certainly no social media. Entertainment was reading. People used to read books and magazines, and you had a couple of thousand, British Navy men who were based there at any given time, and you had their families. And so he opened a English bookshop in front of the Navy base, and that was his catchment. That was his target audience, and he had monopolized literally that market. And all the sailors from the British Navy would basically get off the ship or get off the base, go straight to his store, and buy books and magazines and even newspapers, which by the time they reached Basra were probably 2 months old, but they wanted to read and find out what was happening back home. So he started his business as an English bookshop, and over a course of months and a couple of years, he got to know many of his customers. And they said, look, we miss other products from back home. Why don't you bring us some shirts? Why don't you bring us some pants? Bring us some Clark shoes, for example. And we all know Clark shoes it's very much part of our business today. Bring us pens and other finished goods. So over the years, our English bookshop became a sort of a general store for British-made goods. Some years later, salesmen would travel from Europe to the Middle East, and back in those days, salesmen would travel with a suitcase filled with samples and an order book, and they got to know his shop. So French salesmen used to come and visit, and the Germans would come and visit, and the Americans would come and visit, and that little general store, basically selling British-made goods, became known for European products. And that's how our business started. So primarily, he was catering to the servicemen who were in the region, to their families, and also to the European families that were resettling in the region because of the oil and gas industry, which was then fueling other industries which were setting up because money started to come in. The local people got educated. Money started to flow throughout communities, and in a very short period of time, local citizens and residents also started aspiring towards quality products, and that became his business. He became known as the store for good quality European and American consumer products.
So then, is that, I guess, the spreading of wealth and education and the new sort of consumer class that you saw emerging across the Gulf, is that sort of why then you expanded into Kuwait, into Bahrain, and of course eventually to Dubai and the UAE?
Yeah, so we did pretty well in Basra. And oil and gas was discovered in Kuwait soon after that. And again, British Petroleum asked my grandfather, we're going to be moving some families to Kuwait, and more families are going to come from Europe. Can you consider opening a branch in Kuwait, because our residents here love your store, and if we're going to ask them to move, they would want to be able to buy things that they're familiar with. So we kind of I was going to say, we kind of follow the gas or follow the money. So as oil and gas was being discovered, the quality of life of people was changing, and they were aspiring to acquire good quality products that would improve their lifestyle. So Kuwait opened in the early 30s, I think 1934. A couple of years later, we opened another branch in Bahrain. Then we were invited to open a store here in Dubai. Actually, it was the late Sheikh Rashid who,
I think I heard this.
Who visited Bahrain. He visited Bahrain in the early 50s. And in Bahrain, you had one part of Bahrain, there's an area called Bab al Bahrain. It was basically the souk, and you had a lot as well. When I say a lot of stores, you probably like 30 stores, which was basically the size of the market.
For the time, right?
And you had only 2 stores which were offering good quality finished products, and one was ours, and we were the market leader in European and American consumer products. So Sheikh Rashid, the late ruler of Bahrain, took the late Sheikh Rashid into the souk, and they visited our store, and he met with my grandfather, and I think my late uncle was already working in the store, and he said, look, things are happening in Dubai, and you guys need to come and take a look and open a store. And back then, the Gulf was basically Basra, Kuwait, and Bahrain, the UAE was still quite underdeveloped.
This is 1950s.
1950s, 1950s, yeah. It was still underdeveloped. So my grandfather and my uncle went and took a look and said, okay, it's time, let's open a store in Dubai. My father was still in high school. He was in ninth grade. And in terms of today's qualifications, it's ninth graders really don't know much. But my grandfather basically said, look, I'm going to open a store in Dubai. You're going to finish ninth grade and you're going to come and work in the store with me.
So your father opened the store?
My father and his father opened the store in
when
Dubai.
Basically he was going into 10th grade. So
That's
he would
right.
have been, 15 years
Exactly.
old?
So he opened the store with his father, and my grandfather put my dad behind the cash and said, you're gonna learn how to handle money, and you're gonna learn how to handle the store.
I mean, yeah, that's pretty incredible when you think about it. I think in Abu Dhabi they opened in the 60s, right?
In Abu Dhabi they opened in 1963. That's right. We were invited by Abu Dhabi Petroleum. Our first store actually opened in Das Island, which was the petroleum terminal. They had about 400 or 500 families living there, and there was nothing except the oil loading facility. And they wanted a store. So 2 stores were allowed to open on Das Island. One was a supermarket, and I forget who did the supermarket. And one was a general store, and the general store was ours, was a Jashanmal store.
I mean, I've seen photos of that where it's literally just this, at the time, I imagine, was like a massive structure basically by itself, right?
Yeah.
Is it correct that there was no running water or electricity as well?
There was no running water. There was no electricity. I hear horror stories from my mother about those days, because she met my father when she was in Mumbai. She met this young businessman, very dashing, who would come from a foreign land, and he met her and he proposed to her and he said, I'm going to take you overseas. So she thought, oh, great. I'm going to go overseas. I'm going to go to a foreign country. So she got here, and there was no water. There was no electricity. We had a generator in our store. And during the summer months, we would run the generator in the afternoon in the house. So think of how business was done in the old days. You had a store, and the people who ran the store essentially lived above it, and that's exactly how our first store was in what is now Nasser Square. I think now they call it Bania Square, but it used to be known as it was called Nasser Square. And before they actually started naming parts of Dubai, by default, it was called Jashanmal Square, and in Jashanmal Square there was a little power plant, a substation of sorts, and it had a plaque on it that said Jashanmal Substation, and that plaque is actually still with us, and it's in our office on display today.
I was going to say, is it still at the power station? Because that'd be pretty remarkable. But no, you still have it in the office.
We have the plaque from the power station in the office. But yeah, so there was no running water, there was no electricity. So I remember my mother telling me that water used to come on the backs of donkeys once a week in small oil drums, and then they would empty it into the tank that sat on the roof of the building. And the water smelt of oil, which wasn't very nice. But it was either that or you don't bathe. So that's how it was.
I suppose it's just a unique perfume, fragrance.
Anyway, in a sort, yeah.
Of a sort. So what are then, I guess, the Jashanmal, not just the Gulf and the UAE in particular, has really grown with the country, right?
Oh, yeah.
I'm curious about your first experience with the business. I assume you weren't put to work at 15; that you had a little more time than that, and your father.
I had a little bit. I had a little more time. My first time I worked in the store, I think I was 16 or 17. It was summer holiday. All my friends were having fun, and my dad said, "You know what? You're going to come and work at the store." I'm like, "Really? Are you going to make me work in the store?" And yeah, he made me work in the store.
Why do you think he insisted on you working?
I think he realized that some things need to be learned the hard way, and he wanted to instill some of the qualities that his father had put into him, which is you basically roll up your sleeves and you get on with it. You shovel, right? So he made me work in the store during a summer holiday, and I think I worked for 2 months, and he paid me 300 dirhams a month, and I was so offended because the store cleaner was getting like 3 times my pay. But he's like, it's what I'm going to pay you, and you're going to come in every day before everybody else, and you're going to go home every day after everybody else, and you're going to be proud of the 300 dirhams that you make in the month.
And do you think that's something that you've carried to this day? Just before we started, you were saying that you're someone who's like very much is into your work and like likes to be, involved, and I don't want to say workaholic because it has negative connotations,
Yeah.
but that you're, very committed.
Oh, absolutely. I am very committed. Workaholic is not a nice word. I would call it very dedicated. I'm a grassroots person. I like to interact with people in frontline sales. I like to visit the stores, as many stores as possible. I like to meet my customers and talk to them. So I'm very much sort of bottom up kind of approach.
So I guess your father did something right, putting you to work in the shop
I
at
think so,
16.
but I've got a 23-year-old son who's graduating in the next few months, and sometimes he tells me, "Dad, you're giving me too much of a hard time," and I'm like, "Yeah, I know, but one day you'll thank me for it."
Absolutely. So I guess following on from that, when you first officially joined the company, you just come back, I think, from college or in the
Yeah.
United States. And is it 1987, if I remember correctly, something like that?
Yeah, I graduated at the end of '86, and I started working in January of '87.
Also
right.
in sales. So you sort of came back to, it's
Okay.
interesting that you were, 16 in sales. You went, you got a degree, all this education, you come back, and then you're also in sales.
Yeah, so 16 when I was working, we not only we had a department store, we also had a supermarket back then, and my father put me in the butchery section of the supermarket. So I was basically cutting meat. And then I would come home and my mother would insist that I take a bath first because I would just be smelling of raw meat. But no, so I graduated from the University of Southern California in Los Angeles, and I came back to Dubai with a U.S. degree. I thought to myself, here I am, I've come back with a U.S. degree. Dad, where's my office? Where's my car? Where's my secretary? So my dad took me to see our chief accountant. And he sat me down in front of him, and chief accountant's name was Henry Pinto, and he said, Henry, what's the entry level position that we have currently in the organization? So Henry said, well, it's salesman, outdoor salesman. So my father goes, right, well, my son's going to be assistant outdoor salesman. So he's like, what's the starting salary for an outdoor salesman? And Henry said it's around 2,000 dirhams a month. So my dad said, right, my son's going to start on 1,000 dirhams a month. And last question is, who has the oldest car in the company? And it was an outdoor sales lady by the name of Fahiman. She had a Mazda 323, which was 8 years old. And my dad said, well, I think it's time we got her a new car, and the old car goes to my son. I was so upset. I was literally offended. I don't think I spoke to my father for like 2 weeks.
And he gave you no warning that
he gave me no warning, but he wanted to burst my bubble, and he did. And I realized, life's not going to be easy, but I have to roll up my sleeves and I have to face what it is. And I think my dad wants me to work my way up. So I can either give up and go back to the States and work for somebody else, or I can take on this challenge and show my father and my family that I'm ready to work my way up.
And you did, right? I mean, you
did.
came in sales, and then you think you became a manager for the cosmetics?
That's right. I started in sales. I started in outdoor sales. They gave me like the worst accounts. My first job for the first 6 months was basically to go to Alain, Ras Al Khaimah, Ajman, Fujairah, and collect checks. But then,
in the oldest car.
In the oldest car.
Of course.
In the oldest car, which had no air conditioning. It had no radio. It had manual windows. It broke down half the time, but looking back at it now, it was fun. Yeah, it was fun in its own way. It was fun, but yeah. So I started in outdoor sales, and then there was I'd work my way up. I started hitting numbers. I would come into work before everybody, and I would go home later than everybody, and I really worked hard at it. And then there was an opportunity where one of our brand managers in the cosmetics department was not retiring, but he decided to go back. He was a gentleman from the Philippines, and he'd been offered a job with Max Factor in the Philippines, and he wanted to go back. So my uncle, who was the CEO at that time, Gangu Batra, said, "Look, Shuja, you've been working very well, and this position's opening up as a brand manager for fragrances. You want a shot at it?" And I said, absolutely, I want a shot at it. So I became brand manager. I got into the fragrance business, and I stayed with the fragrance business for a good almost 20 years.
So what was that like then, at 20 years in the fragrance business? I guess that's obviously a lot of time for the business to change, trends to change. What was that experience like?
Oh yeah. No, it was great. I mean, being in the fragrance business was great because you worked with big designer names. You got to travel to Europe quite often, which was a lot of fun for a young man. I got to travel to the States as well, and I always love going back to the States because of my university days. But the fragrance business evolved tremendously. Back when I started out, Dubai was by and large a re-export hub. So a lot of what, because the local market was very small, a lot of what we imported was re-exported to Iran, to Saudi Arabia, to India, Pakistan, the traditional way through launches and small vessels, etc. But Dubai, with the leadership and vision of first with His Highness Sheikh Rashid and then Sheikh Mashtoum after and His Highness Sheikh Rashid Sheikh Mohammed now. With the great vision, it has changed from a small trading post, a re-export post, to a sizable local market. So businesses evolve from little wholesalers to shopping malls and department stores with experiences. All the big brands of the world are here today. So the way we do business is certainly very different from the way it used to be. It's a lot more complicated, but it's a lot more challenging and in its own way fun as well.
So at one point, I think you went off and started your own sort of business as well.
Yes, I did.
It's still in the same sort of fragrance and cosmetic space, I think.
Yes, that's right.
What inspired you to do that? What made you decide, I want to try something, on my own?
I really liked the beauty and fragrance business, and as the UAE started to grow, so we used to be distributors for fragrances and cosmetics, and we probably had around 40% of the brands that were available in the region were distributed by us. But as the region grew, a lot of the manufacturers said, your markets used to be small, and we were quite happy having you as a distributor, and we would supply you, you'd pay us, and you could do what you wanted with the products. But your markets are growing, and they're becoming interesting, so we're going to change the business model from supplier-distributor to joint venture, or we're going to basically buy back the distribution rights, and we want to do it ourselves. So many of the brands that we were distributor of changed into joint venture companies, where the controlling the company was not really with us anymore on a day-to-day basis. It was basically done by the manufacturer. So, Parfums Dior got involved, the Calvin Klein, Davidoff, the Coty group got involved. We were also working with L'Oreal brands. L'Oreal set up their operations over here, and they said, you're a partner. We're in a joint venture with you. So you got stakeholding in this company, but we're going to run the business. So my day-to-day activity started becoming smaller because the responsibility of running the brands was moving from our office to the joint venture office. But I really liked this business, and I wasn't ready to get into some of the other businesses we were in. So I told my family, I said, I'm going to take a leave of absence, and I'm going to start my own company. And because I'm in the business, I realize that there's a lot of potential in emerging brands that don't have the means, the capability, or the vision yet to tap this region. And because I've been in the business for a while, I know what these brands are. I know that there's a market for it, and there is demand. So I set up a company called Lucre, and we started introducing brands to the region, which are basically niche brands that come from smaller perfumeries, which are owned and operated by real sort of aficionados of the industry, but they didn't have the means of the L'Oreals or the Procter & Gambles of this world to go global. So I did that for a while, and I was really enjoying it. But then, in our family business, there's although there are several family members around in the Gulf, we've been letting family members pursue their own passion. And today in the family business, there's only two Jashanmals actively involved in the business. There's me and my elder cousin, Tony, who's the group president. So Tony then basically said, there's just me and you. And I know that you know the business and you like our business. And I'm getting older, so you need to come back. So I'm like, okay, I can spare some time. I'll take a day a week, and I'll come and sit in the office. And I started with that, and then Tony said, okay, it's great you've been here for a few months, coming in 1 day a week, but can you make it 2 days a week? And it became 2 days a week, and then one day he just called me. He said, listen, whatever you're doing with that Lucre, shut it down and come and work with us. Come and work in the family business full time. So that's what I did. I realized that was a bigger picture, and I did.
Well, I'm sure it sounds like obviously they're delighted to have you back, which is great. I mean, a lot of that is, I guess, down to legacy.
Yeah.
again, something that has lasted over 100 years, particularly in our region, feels like truly a storied company, a storied name. And I wonder sort of how you feel about that. Like obviously, they're bringing you back in. I'm sure there's a lot of excitement around it, and you as you rightfully said, you know the business inside out. You've been working there for since '87. Well,
on and
earlier,
off
or
since '87. Yeah,
or even earlier if you count the when you're 16. How does that? How do you interact with that? How do you interact with this idea of legacy, of carrying on the business, of somehow sort of maintaining the identity of it, I suppose, over this long period of time, and then taking that forward?
It's a huge responsibility, because if you make a mistake, it's not just a mistake that you've made from your own doing. You're also making a mistake that's affecting your father and your grandfather. I mean, you basically, going back generations. So there's a lot of weight that comes with it, a lot of responsibility, also a lot of expectations. It's not very common for businesses to get into third and fourth generation. I mean, I remember reading a report somewhere that only 1% of the companies actually make it into third generation, and even less than that into fourth generation. It gets more and more challenging. And new generations have their own ideas and desires and want to do different things sometimes in life. But so first and foremost, it's a very big responsibility. Coming back to the company also wasn't easy. I didn't come back and demand things. I came back and I said, right, what's the space for me? And they're like, this is what the space is. So I basically, again, rolled up my sleeves. I got on with it. I worked that space as best as I could. And when opportunities came, I took additional spaces. And then I started to grow within the company. And recently we had a change in top management, and the group CEO's position was offered to me. Almost insisted upon me. There was actually a vote that took place, and it was unanimous. So I actually didn't have any choice. I realized everybody around me felt that I'd obviously done something right in my life, and I deserved this position. So I accepted it happily.
Fantastic. Well, I mean, it sounds like you've done many things right, which is great. So I guess looking then, at where you are now as the group CEO, what do you want to do with the company? Where do you want to take it at this stage as you've come into this role?
We know what we do very well. We know the businesses that we're very good at. One thing we don't want to do is trying to do everything, because I think in today's highly competitive environment, you can't be good at everything. You need to find what you're good at and try to do it better than anybody else, or at least better than most of your competitors.
It's interesting you say that, because for me, again, this is historically speaking. When I think of Jashanmal, certainly like from the 90s.
Yes, well, we did almost everything.
It was the everything story.
Yeah,
You get your appliances, your school supplies, your books, your magazines. Everything was there. But yes, please carry on.
So we used to do other things as well. I mean, we used to do food. We used to do biscuits and chocolates. We used to do jewelry. We used to do music products, records. We were the biggest gramophone retail store in the Middle East for many, many years. So most people probably don't know what a gramophone is, but it's the ancestor of the record player.
I'm old enough to know the gramophone.
Okay, so it's the ancestor of the record player.
Vinyl is very popular. I'm sure more people do than you think. Yeah.
So we know what we do very well today. Our distribution capabilities are strong. So we're good at distributors of consumer product. We're also good at retailers, but in a certain space. We're very good as retailers in the premium to luxury, entry luxury segment of the market. And that's what we're going to continue focusing on. But going forward, I think all businesses don't stay identical over generations. New business opportunities come up, and we are continuously looking at new business opportunities. I mean, if you look at some of the examples, I mean, Amazon, what it is today, it started out similar to us as a online book retailer, basically, and I think it took 3 months for them to sell their first book online, and we basically know what they are today. They are marketplace for any consumer product, and they're the biggest and probably the best at it. There are other companies. Somebody once told me that Nokia, I think, started out selling toilet paper and Kleenex boxes, for example, and then they got into telecommunications. So, are we going to stay in retail and distribution? Most likely. These are the areas we're good at, but I'm pretty certain we're going to latch onto new industries as they come up. E-commerce is very, very important for us. It's we started our e-commerce 4 or 5 years ago, and it's a big focus for us. We were pioneers in the retailing industry. We're not the pioneers in e-commerce. There are other people ahead of the game for us, but it is how business is done today, and we do aim to be a force to be reckoned with in e-commerce in the next 3 to 5 years as well. We're also looking at other opportunities, be it in real estate, be it in shopping malls, etc. So 10 to 20 years from now, I think what we do today will be half of our business, and I think half of it will be new businesses that we're going to get into.
So you do think that in 10 to 20 years, there'll still be dedicated retail shops? Because I mean, that's something again people look at. They look at retail in general. I know that, here in the Dubai and the Middle East, we're more resilient than other places. The mall culture is still very strong.
Yeah.
Physical retail spaces are still, attractive to people. But there is this sense that retail is slowly fading as people like Amazon and keep pushing the e-commerce piece, obviously why you're interested in it as well. Is that something you think then that will still be, that the core sort of physical store experience will still be important in 10, 20 years?
I think retail will always stay. Look, retailing has been around for 8, 10, 12, 20,000 years. I don't know how far back mankind goes, but somebody set up a shop one day.
The first people probably sold something to each other.
Exactly,
right? Yeah,
exactly. We won't talk about what they sold, but whatever was available. I think retailing is still going to be around. I think it's going to share the space with e-commerce. I think it's going to share the space with fast commerce and whatever else new that comes up. But retail spaces are getting smaller. Retail stores are turning into omni-channel stores, where they will display their best selling products and their most experiential products that really need the consumer to touch and feel and try and listen to or press the button and see how something is made. But I think stores are also where a lot of e-commerce sales are gonna happen. So customer walks into the store, he sees the latest product X in our store and says, can I see derivatives of it? Do you have it in other sizes, colors? And we're going to open this huge screen, and we're going to be able to show him other sizes and colors. And then we're going to be able to say, would you like it delivered to your house before you get there? Or are you happy with the product that we showed you? And this product you can take with you, or we can also deliver it to your home before you get there. So retail is going to become a extension of e-commerce. Whereas a few years ago, e-commerce was an extension of retail business, it's going to be the other way around. But both are going to sit there side by side.
I think that makes good sense. I want to circle back on something we were talking about earlier with regards to the UAE, Dubai, and sort of how the country's evolved, grown, expanded, and obviously Jashanmal has expanded with it
a little bit,
just a touch. What, to your mind, do you think made Dubai and the UAE, or makes Dubai and the UAE, an interesting, unique place to build a business? Especially coming from the 1950s. Most of the people we've spoken to, actually, I don't think a single person we've spoken to on the show started their business in the 1950s. I think the earliest we have is 1970. So I'd love to hear sort of your perspective.
Well, I said it earlier. The foresight and vision of the leaders in this part of the world is absolutely stunning. It's outstanding. I don't think human history has seen such an evolution of a place. I mean, I talk to people and they say, it took Europe 500 years to evolve from a medieval place to what it is today. It's happened in my lifetime. I mean, like when I said earlier, when I grew up here, we basically had 2 roads, one in Deira, one in Bur Dubai, and the roads were a kilometer or 2 long, and the rest of it was Subka road or dirt roads, no water, electricity. And today we're living in probably the greatest first world city there is on the planet. So definitely the vision and foresight of the leaders, and belief in themselves, belief in their people. I remember when I was studying in the States. My economics professor, he's actually my mentor. He's one of my mentors today, Dr. Ahmed Isfahani. We did a case study. We were looking at Gulf states, and we were looking at Nigeria, both emerging economies, both with over 100 years of oil reserves. And Nigeria was a mess. rife with coup d'etats, rife with corruption, and the Gulf was burgeoning, blooming economy, because the people here, the locals, the Emiratis or the Bahrainis or the Omanis or the Qataris and Kuwaitis believed in themselves, and whatever wealth was coming to them, they were reinvesting in themselves, and they were reinvesting in their own country, and not sending it out to some fancy Swiss account or London-based account, which unfortunately some of the other countries did. So the foresight and the dedication and the stories you hear of the late Sheikh Rashid and of course the ruling family now to keep reinvesting in this country. I mean, we all know His Highness Sheikh Mohammed saying again and again that Dubai is why not number one? Why not number one at everything we do? And you don't hear a lot of leaders in the world today saying, why not New York number one? Why not London number one? But you hear it here. And here are people that came out of the desert a generation ago. It's phenomenal. It's phenomenal. They came out of the desert. The world looked at them and said, you know what? These people are not going to go anywhere. They have a lot of oil, and we're going to take it. Good luck. They went further than you guys have gone. So it's really fantastic.
Oh, I mean, thank you. That was, I think, glowing endorsement. Obviously, I mean, like you,
I grew up here, and I've seen it, and I feel it.
I mean, I do too, but I really resonate with a lot of what you said there. I'm curious, I guess, about you specifically, maybe your own personal philosophies on business. Do you have certain, core ideas, philosophies, a creed that you go by when you're doing business? Are there any specific red lines that you don't cross or you think about? I'd just love to get your thoughts on that.
So some of the philosophies go back to saying from my grandfather that whatever we do, we need to serve the community where our business is established, and we need to try to improve the quality of lives of the citizens and the residents in whichever city we operate our business. So that, I think, is part of the DNA of every Jashanmal member. But in addition to that, I live by certain rules. One is speed. I like to move fast. I like to make informed decisions quickly. I don't like to fester, because opportunity knocks and leaves very quickly, and the market moves even faster than you. So the longer you pause and think about things, chances are the opportunity is going to leave you, or the door is going to get narrower and narrower, and you end up getting a smaller share of what you wanted to do.
Are there any specific examples where that's happened?
Oh, there's thousands of examples. I can't think of anything right now. But in business today, and more so today than when I first started out, speed is really of the essence. But you need to make decisions based on being well informed, and you're well informed by having a good, strong, reliable, knowledgeable team around you, because nobody can do anything alone. You need to have a strong team around you, dedicated and well informed, and then you need to move faster than your competitors. So speed is essential, as is the old saying of whatever I do, I need to improve the quality of lives of my customers.
You talked earlier about the rarity, I guess, when it comes to businesses. 1% of businesses make it to, you said, third generation, or fourth generation is even, more unlikely. Do you imagine that your son, your kids will be taking over? Is that sort of the plan, that you're going to continue with the next generation?
When I was studying, my father never put pressure on me to join the business. He said, look, we have a family business. It'll be nice if you join. But more than anything else, he wanted me to do what I wanted to do, what I like to do. And I'm telling my son the same. He's shown an inkling to joining the business. He's studying real estate, which is a little bit different from what we do today. But I'm telling him, I'm like, he seems to have a passion for real estate. So I'm like, run with it, see where it takes you. And if you want to join the business, one thing I will ask of you is don't come and join the business with a feeding bowl. Say, look, I'm back, feed me, give me a big office, a big car, and a secretary. It's not going to happen. If you want to come back and join the business, you need to prove to me and my partners what values are you going to bring to us, and why should we hire you over the next person who in our mind is the best person suited for the job. And if you can satisfy that, then there's an opportunity for you in this business. Otherwise, pursue your passion and be very good at what you choose to do. To succeed, you need to have a passion for what you're doing, and you need to work harder than anybody else. And that's one of the reasons I think why businesses don't succeed from generation to generation, because you have kids, they grow up in a different way, and they have different passions. They may not, a successful chef may have a son and daughter who really doesn't like cooking. What do you do? The son might want to be an auto mechanic. So how does that restaurant continue? Most likely it doesn't. Maybe it becomes a car garage. I don't know, but we are in the third generation. I found passion for this business, and we'll see. Maybe my son will find it, but he has to prove himself to himself first, and then to me and my partners.
I guess as you did, back in the day. Is there anything that you miss sort of about how the business used to be? It was sort of smaller, more, fewer people, fewer things to keep track of.
Yeah, when it was smaller, we had a lot more time for each other. People used to see each other almost every day, certainly once or twice a week. People were always either at our house or we were over at friends' houses. The business was much more slow-paced. There was siesta time in the afternoon. Most people probably don't know this, but Dubai used to shut down between 1 and 4 in the afternoon. Everybody used to go home. They used to eat at home, and then they would nap for a while, and then they come back to work at 4:30. So it was definitely.
I remember that. By the way,
you remember that. Yeah. So it was definitely a slower pace. People had time for each other. It was easygoing. It was a lot easier to do because the costs or the competitive environment that we deal with today wasn't there. Labor was very cheap. Government fees were pretty much non-existent. Water, electricity cost you hardly anything. Rents were cheap. Profit margins were big. And today everything is razor thin. Today for a business, if you have one bad week, your year is gone. I mean, margins are razor thin. So just imagine what something like COVID did to most businesses, and we well know how that went. But business was easier. Business was just more relaxing.
Well, I guess it's good that you have the passion then to take on all these new challenges. I know you talked before a little bit about sort of the immediate future for Jashanmal Group and sort of your plans and aspirations. But considering this is such a storied, company, do you have any ideas, any sort of imaginings of what it might look like in 100 years?
I touched on this earlier. I think we're definitely going to be far more e-commerce centric, and I think we're going to be also players in the real estate, commercial real estate aspect of business, be it shopping malls, be it community centers, etc. I see those new business models really taking shape and probably becoming the larger share of our company, a decade or two from now.
So constantly evolving into new spaces.
We have to evolve with the markets. We have to evolve with the size of the business, and new opportunities will come up. And we are seasoned business people. We're able to sniff out and sense opportunities, and hopefully we will move fast and get some of those opportunities before everybody jumps on the bandwagon.
Well, you've been standing for a century. Why not another one, right?
Hopefully another one, yes.
Hopefully
and many more.
And many more. Yeah. Shuja, thank you so much for being with us on
Homegrown
DXB.
Thank you.
It was such a wonderful conversation. I really appreciate it.
Thank you very much. Real pleasure to be here. Thank you.